As parties are jostling to lead Nigeria come May 29, 2023, the primacy of the economy to Nigeria's development cannot be overemphasized. As the Bill Clinton campaign had it back in the 90s, it's all about the economy. But what have we not tried before? Running the economy is often easier said than done. Beyond mere rhetorics, how does Nigeria get out of the quagmire of slow growth, social despair, and economic downturns of all sorts and start to make real progress? What about the interaction of our economy with the global community? How well has our quest to fund our economy via foreign investment fared? And what options are open to Nigeria going forward? Joining us today to discuss these and many more issues is someone who should know. Though a lawyer and investment banker for decades, he is arguably one of Nigeria's most articulate and astute economists and a former presidential candidate. A big welcome to Professor Kingsley Moghalu. You're welcome, sir.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
So I'll hit you straight. Which way forward for Nigeria's economy?
The path to Nigeria's economic development, first of all, before we talk about growth, and then transformation, lies through politics.
In politics?
Yes.
Very surprising.
I came to shock you.
Wow.
You see, because we keep talking about the economy, but we keep missing something. For a developing country like Nigeria, and for many other developing countries, including those that have actually made it out of the low levels like China and moved into major economic emerging powers today, economic transformation is always, first of all, the product of a political consensus among the elite of the country.
Elite consensus.
There has to be an elite consensus on development. And that is the thesis of this book called Gambling on Development. Why some countries win and others lose. It was written by Stefan Durkheim, a professor of economic policy at Oxford recently. Just launched it in Lagos 2 days ago, and I was there. The other thing that needs to accompany that consensus is the strength of institutions.
Right.
The independence of and strong institutions. Because without strong political institutions, you cannot have strong economic institutions.
Okay.
And we see that today with the way that the Central Bank of Nigeria has pretty much imploded in the management of its own part of the Nigerian economy. First of all, because its independence was compromised. When I was deputy governor of the central bank, under the leadership, the ultimate leadership of Sanusi Lamido Sanusi, as he then was, who was the governor, we were an independent central bank. Politicians could not tell us what to do. We were not making interventions to please anybody in Aso Rock. That's not what it is today. So the inability of the relevant institutions to function effectively leads to a distortion of policy making, because policy is made to serve vested interests.
When it is compromised.
When it is compromised, you see? So that's why I keep telling people that the roots of Nigeria's economic development and growth, inclusive growth that can take people out of poverty, must first of all come from competent and committed political leadership at the highest levels.
Absolutely, but I want to interrogate something, just two things. Like that, I'm thinking, okay, so how do we get this politics working? Because we know what our politics is like.
Course,
I mean, it's probably 19th century U.S. politics, something of that sort. Depression era U.S. politics, a lot of trading and all of that stuff. But how do we get this political consensus going? And number two, and very importantly, we talk about strong institutions, but can weak leaders build strong institutions or maintain them?
Very difficult.
Is it going to be mutually exclusive to find leaders who are strong in terms of intellectually, who will then build the strong institution or maintain institutions that are strong. It takes a kind of strength to say, okay,
exactly.
Central bank is supposed to be independent, I'll let them be.
Exactly.
The law says.
Exactly.
It's a lot of strength, in fact, more than anything. What do you think about this?
No, I totally agree with you. As I was saying, the key to Nigeria's economic success lies in political economy, not in economic equations. We have
exactly.
We have many.
Mathematical.
Yes, that is nonsense. We have many brilliant economists in this country, and yet the economy has been tanking for the past 40 years.
Wow.
And we have not found a solution. So you have the question of political economy, the interaction between politics and economics. Then you have the question of economic philosophy, that we don't have a consistent economic philosophy on which economic policy is then based and executed. Then you have even the more foundational problem. Nigeria is a country, but is it a nation?
Well, okay.
We are very divided, and because of that, our politics, the reason people go into politics, the quest for power is to serve selfish and sectional sectarian interests. When you have that, there's no unity of purpose. So the economy cannot thrive because, in our own case, we have oil. So the whole question of politics in Nigeria has always been about who will control the oil revenues and use it as a crony patronage machine for their party, for their ethnic group, for their friends, and things like that. So the source of Nigeria's economic problems is in fact political. Wow. And then the fact that we don't have, you talked about politics, how can we must now begin to encourage ideas in our politics. The citizens should be educated to know, both by the presidential candidates who think they want to make change. Some others may not be interested in educating the citizens because that means they will become free and able to think. We have a voting electorate that is not educated. They don't understand the issues. So they don't know what questions to ask presidential candidates or governorship candidates. They don't know what are the issues or how they should be tackled, and then look for the kind of people who have the knowledge, the experience, the political will to do so. So this question of education comes back again. We have a 62% literacy rate in Nigeria. That is horrible. That is shameful. We should have nothing less than a 95% literacy rate. And that's the problem. When you make education very low in priority, you get this type of society, and this type of society produces the kind of leadership it deserves, because the politicians they support are those who are there for money, for power, for the sake of power, and those kinds of things. But we are seeing something happening in Nigeria today. Many people would say, oh, we don't have a perfect candidate for the presidency, maybe. But you do see that the people are getting tired, especially young people. They know they're suffering. They know their future has been stolen. And gradually, many of them are beginning to try to organize to do something about it. So this is how societies evolve. And we have to see whether 2023 will mark a break with our past or pivot us towards a somewhat different future.
Direction.
But it's a matter for the people of Nigeria to really, at the end of the day, nobody can do it for them. Another way is that you can have a political leader who may not be so great or so competent, but he may have the ability to say, well, the technocrats who are competent, they know best, or I will at least have confidence in them and empower them to come out with, President Obasanjo recently took a PhD. But when he was president, he wasn't a PhD holder.
No, he wasn't.
But nevertheless, he knew what he wanted economically because of his experience. And he looked for and found the kinds of strong technocrats who could make those reforms, and he backed them up politically. Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala was there. El Rufai was there. Who else?
Soludo.
Yes, Charles Soludo, Nuhu Ribadu, and Obieza Kwesile, and several of them. And you found that you could not touch those people. The politicians didn't like any of these people, I'm telling you, but you couldn't touch them. Obasanjo made sure you can't touch them. So that was leadership and that produced certain results for the economy, but it was not sustained.
Anyway, now let me bump in here because you mentioned something which is quite very interesting. That Nigeria is probably a country, not a nation.
Yes.
I know you had written a book to build a nation. So I wanted you to perhaps run us through, what does it take to build a nation? How do we use our diversity, which is supposed to be an advantage? But
that's right.
For now, as we sit here today, it's like a disadvantage because we kind of emphasize our differences.
We're like crabs in a basket,
exactly,
pulling each other down.
We have different races.
Absolutely.
In Nigeria, you see Yoruba race, and this one race, and all of that. And
Yoruba nation.
Well, we race into,
so exactly.
How do we make? And what kind of leader would be able to harness this diversity for advantage? And how do you build a nation?
Yes, first of all, diversity is not necessarily something that should prevent us from being united and moving forward. If there is commonality of purpose, if there is unity of purpose, if there's a vision that has been inculcated in the people by a leader who has it. But the leader has to have the vision. And then the leader, he or she, has to educate the people on the vision using two major tools. One, the educational system. That's where it starts. People in primary school and secondary school have to learn to be patriotic. They have to learn to be ethical. That's why I proposed when I ran for president that ethics should be a compulsory subject in primary and secondary school. That children be taught what's right and what's wrong from a very early age. That's one of the ways in which you fight corruption much more effectively. You have to have that visionary leadership, that enlightened leadership that can rise above ethnic or religious pools. But it's not easy in a society like this. But there are people like that. But the political process in the party primaries has not yet produced those kinds of people. You see, unfortunately. So internal democracy in political parties is a matter, might be a subject for another day, but we should look at it. Because but you see, there's another way to get to this place. And that is that if there is a consensus among the elite, who are the elite in this country? The four most powerful subsectors of the elite are as follows. One, the former military heads of states, or the former heads of state generally, but especially the ex-military ones and ex-military generals. Two, politicians, the leading levels of the political class. Not every politician, but the top echelons of them. Three, business. The business CEOs and all of that, and then top traditional rulers. You may occasionally find one or two or three from the media who belong to this class. They're not just journalists, but they're media entrepreneurs. And they are in the know about the wheeling and dealing in the political class. These are the elite of Nigeria. Now, if they were to come to some sort of consensus that is in their own interest, to take a longer-term view about Nigeria's economy and our stability, rather than looking to grab and eat today, this 100 million people who are living in extreme poverty, what if they start jumping across our fences? What if they start cracking the glasses of our limousines on the streets? What if all hell breaks loose, especially with the way inflation is going and people are suffering? Look at the price of food. Look at the price of other consumer items. So this can also force the political class to begin to move in a certain direction. So instead of waiting for our politics to evolve to that level, which may take another 50 years. But the elite, not all of the elite will agree, but if a majority of them agree to begin like this, the people who have money will say, you know what, we can finance your presidential campaign, but we're looking for a guy who's enlightened. We don't want just any mumu to emerge as a presidential candidate. So deals have to be done. Because people have to manage their own personal agendas and their personal interests and balance it against the national interest for their businesses and their wealth to be sustainable.
It sounds like a very sensible thing to do.
Yes.
One would wonder
but common
why,
sense is not common.
It's not very common. Indeed, one would wonder why it hasn't been done. And
yes.
I also worry about the logistics of it. Who builds the cart? Who becomes the prime mover? And what are those things that we have to have in the bag to say, okay,
I have always felt
on the way. But
I have always
we would want to go and pay some bills now.
Okay,
I want you to ruminate on all of those, and then we'll come back to you. So we'll take a quick break and then we'll be right back. Welcome back, viewers, and we've been talking matters of political economy, leadership, elite consensus, and other groundbreaking thoughts with Professor Kingsley Moghalu. So you're welcome back, and just before we left, I was thinking about the granular,
how do we make it happen?
How do we make it happen? This elite consensus.
Yes.
I'm trying to imagine how it can work. And perhaps we should be looking for a linchpin among the elite.
Exactly. I believe
it could even be you, because you are among those people that you have mentioned, and then what kind of sacrifices will they have to make, to say, okay, listen, this is now being actioned. And I want you to add to that. When you were talking earlier, we started from the point of view of education. And, you ran for president, I also did my little bit.
Yes.
And I remember moving around some parts of the country. And in some part, especially in some part of the north, Katsina, Zamfara. When I was there, I found out that, and Sokoto as well, there were these many young people who were very eager to learn. So around 9:30, 10, you see them walking to school. And I branched in a few of those schools, there were thousands of them there. There were no teachers. So I asked questions, and they said, the empower people they send to us don't come to work. And I understand later that some of those empower people struck a deal with the principal. They just show up on payday. The principal takes half of the money. But I also see this as a great opportunity in terms of, those are teaching jobs that's there. Those are social service work that we haven't created.
That's right.
Even in the public, I don't know how it's going to be done, and so on. So I wanted to merge these two questions.
That's right.
Let's look at that educational and issue and what we can make of it, and the challenge and the opportunities in there. Number two, let's look at the elite consensus we need to build. How do we, because look, we have a lot of big seminars in this country. And,
but that's not what will solve anything.
Exactly. So I wonder, how can we really
let me give you some ideas about how I think. This is one of the reasons that I, as a member of the elite, I am outspoken. I don't shut up. I speak my belief. I speak what I believe. I'm humble in understanding that I may not have all the solutions, but at least as a citizen, I am making a contribution. And many people, thousands, millions of people who listen to me in this country today have, as a result of listening to the things I have been saying repeatedly for the past 4 or 5 years, begun to think in a certain way. A lot of young people were influenced by my thoughts. This is how consensus is built. So, for example, now, my recommendation is that a possible linchpin could be all the former heads of states. They are elderly now. There are not many of them. But for them to be able to be the linchpin, they have to act in concert. They have to be united. I don't see that yet.
There's something called the Council of State.
There's the Council of State. Yes, but that's more of a body that makes recommendations to the president.
And they're not that, they don't meet that frequently.
They don't meet that frequently.
They don't say much.
But the former heads of states interact a lot informally with different parts of society and also among themselves. But I think that each one of them tries to exert his influence, but none of them acting alone can actually change the system. But if they all were to come together and make a deliberate agreement that before we leave this world, we will begin to move Nigeria
Yes.
in a certain direction.
But I think they're going to need some assistance from maybe someone like you to paint a picture for them of what could be.
Well,
because sometimes
yes, I
maybe they've
understand.
seen enough conspiracies in their time.
I know.
Many
I
of
know.
them, well, let the country be, that's what the people...
I understand.
So an external party to paint a picture of, listen, this country, these 200
Yes.
million people
Exactly.
can achieve
Yes.
this much greatness
exactly.
if only.
Exactly.
Yes.
So yes, I agree. Certainly I've never been shy to offer whatever one can offer to these kinds of conversations. And so if called upon, certainly, why not? But the point is that they need to understand that each one of them, influential as they may be,
Right.
is not going to do the trick. And when I said this at the launch of the Stefan Durkon book in Lagos a few days ago, Olusegun Obasanjo was there, and he did have a response for me.
Wow.
He said that, Kingsley, you may not know that one of the first things that a new president does not want to see
Right.
is a former president.
Yeah.
Then he came out with the proverb that, the first Yoruba proverb that the first person the king must kill is the kingmaker.
Wow.
So if, as a former head of state, you get too far ahead, he said, and I'm quoting him, what happened to Obasanjo can happen to you. In terms of, he's going to jail when Abacha clamped down on him and he almost was killed and all of that. It was a very interesting response. But that's the reason why I believe that if they were to act together, nobody's going to go and clamp all the former presidents or try to even, the fact that they've been presidents of this country, I think it confers them with a certain unique, they have seen it all. And if 4, 5, 6 of them were to come together and sit down the political parties and say, listen, we cannot just rely on politics alone, because if we rely on politics alone, those who have the most money will buy the tickets.
Yes.
But look at this country. We need it to begin to move in a certain direction. So can we have the minimum set of criteria through which we select the next level of leadership of this country? So these kinds, and they can identify who else in the elite they may need to talk to. They may need to say, from the traditional rulers, let's first of all get the Sultan of Sokoto, Oni of Ife, Obi of Onisha. We start with the 3, Oba of Benin, that sort of thing. That, They can say in the business community, let's get Dangote or Tedola, and then you start, and then you begin to widen the conversation.
A smart president would actually even grab this. Yes. They're doing your job for you, really, and making your job easier.
Exactly.
The way the politics works is that whatever they achieve, the president
takes the glory.
And then when I was there, we managed to...
Absolutely.
If, for example, Nigeria's economic growth started to inch towards double digits.
Exactly. Who will take the credit?
As a result, you take the
political
credit.
leader. So it's actually in the enlightened self-interest of political leaders to source the right kinds of hands and empower them to deliver results. And don't allow anybody to bother them, because always in the quest to reform, there will be vested interests.
Amazing.
Some which may be affected. They will go over the head of the minister, go over the head of the central bank governor, and go to the president. The president must never listen to them. When Soludo was doing the consolidation of the banks, Obasanjo did not entertain any lobbying attempt to talk to him to stop it. When Sanusi and us, his colleagues, were engaged in the reform of the financial system after the global financial crisis, Yaradua did not interfere.
He made himself unavailable.
He made himself unavailable. And our reforms even touched Bank PHB, in which Yaradua's family had an interest. Bless his soul. But this is how progress can be made in a country. And so we need political leaders who are emerging to begin to think.
Let's talk about some granular issues around, the macroeconomy, the monetary policy issue. The MPC met recently, and we're looking at an upward trajectory in policy rates. Of course, it's supposed to be in reference, response rather to inflationary trends. Inflation is doing 20.52 presently. And inflation even around the world. In Europe, 50-year highs.
Yeah.
In America, 40-year highs, 10%
Absolutely.
and so
Absolutely.
on.
Yeah.
Are you worried that consistent increases in interest rate may slow down the economy, or is that the way to go? Because again,
Yeah.
I see that the banks are quick on the trigger. The moment you increase policy rate, they take lending rates up. Of course, manufacturers and those who need credit are having to access it much. And of course, new businesses cannot come on board because rates are now out of, so what are your thoughts in terms of monetary policy?
First of all, let me start with the comment you made about new businesses not being able to come on board because of high monetary policy rates and so on. I have always felt that our financial system relies too much on credit.
Is what?
Relies too much
on credit. Yeah.
Because credit is expensive for structural reasons. Lack of infrastructure, inflation, monetary policy responses, all these things make, and then collateral requirements, make lending inaccessible to many Nigerians. Do you know that more than 70% of all bank lending occurs in Lagos?
Indeed.
In this country.
Indeed.
So there isn't financial diffusion. My recommendation is that we should move a lot more towards venture capital.
Right.
And when I was running for president, I did propose this 1 trillion naira initial venture capital fund where the government could invest 500 billion or 400 billion, and the private sector would invest the rest, and the private sector would run the fund.
Right.
Because once it's run by the government,
exactly.
Yeah, it will be seen as AWOOF money, and a lot of inefficiencies will come in, and that's the problem you have with the N-Power and all of these things. A lot of corruption, lack of accountability, lack of transparency defeats the purpose. All the good intentions go down the drain. So we need to move a lot more towards venture capital, which is ownership equity capital, not just lending that you must pay back. So this is a model that we need to move a lot more, just to make that point before I move on. Now, to come to the broader issue of the interest rates rising, you will see that central banks all over the world are responding in a similar manner. Because oftentimes, you have to make very tough choices between inflation and growth.
Exactly.
Between inflation and other sacrifices, such as access to credit and all that, because inflation is the most regressive tax on the poor. It's the worst thing that can happen to an economy because, first of all, it makes your naira, in the case of Nigeria, valueless. Because you can buy much less because prices have gone through the roof. That, in turn, increases poverty. That brings unemployment. Because if people cannot buy what you're selling, your business will go out of
See, you're the kind of guest that we have to drag you here back to back like 4 times. I want you to have a last word. And, this very, we haven't quite explored the issue of this, what do we do with inflation? Growth?
I was going to make a very important point.
You make it in the last word, but I want you to add to that. And under maybe 30 seconds, is the world going into a global recession? Another one. Last word.
Yes. Now, I was going to say that in addition to raising monetary policy rates, in Nigeria, the central bank did it too late. They were running an expansionary policy when they should have not been doing that. And so now, a little bit late in the day, they're trying to play catch up. But more importantly, is that if you want to raise interest rates, if you want to contract the money supply, you cannot be undermining your policy action by acting with the left hand and undermining it with the right hand. What are they doing? They're raising monetary policy rates with the left hand, and they are giving ways and means lending that is absolutely above.
And inflationary money.
And they're creating inflationary money. So you see, there's a contradiction in a very fundamental way. But why is this happening? It comes back to the question of political economy. Because the government does not understand the implications of this.
These are very momentous discussions, which the truth is very few, shows, or maybe if you like economy, will take you down that trajectory.
Absolutely.
We need to get this out of your brain for the sake of Nigeria. So thank you very much for coming. It's been a great show today with Professor Moghalu, and I hope that you've gained quite a bit, in terms of our discussion. See you next week.